The EP Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at theeppodcast.com.
And welcome into the EP Podcast. My name is Chris Lanuti, and this is your weekend update brought to you by the First National Bank of Evergreen Park. They know that when you're working toward a financial goal, every little bit counts, and that's why when you open up a Total Access checking account, you get free ATMs nationwide, a $300 bonus thrown in, and you get great mobile and online banking tools. Plus, you get the support that I get. I just reached out today and said, hey, I can't figure out my password. I'm not really sure about something with the online banking. Bada bing, bada boom, it was fixed. No problem. No standing in line, not going on Twitter and asking a question. Actual people I can go in and see or get on the phone at a moment's notice. And you have easy access to your money, plus a little extra to enjoy your summer and now the upcoming fall. Open online at bankevergreenpark.com/total-access/EP. $100 required to open. Requirements to qualify. Must use link to apply. Member FDIC. Hannah is off right now. There's a reason for that. I told her and all the other guests to stay away. COVID has come to the Lanuti house, and it was inevitable, just like Thanos. The Lanuti kids have all come down with COVID-19, and one of the things that I want to do is kind of talk about what I've gone through myself and my wife over the last 36 hours or so, because it was eye-opening in a lot of ways. And while we take this journey that I think a lot of parents, it would benefit them, I kind of dedicate this episode to the parents of Evergreen Park and those in the surrounding areas around Evergreen Park here on the south side, because there's an awful lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of people that are nervous with kids going back to school. The 3 kids from age 6 through 15 that have contracted COVID and what has happened over the last 36 hours, and they caught it 3 days ago or so, was when they first started showing symptoms, has been eye-opening. And joining me on this journey today, I brought in a medical expert that we've all talked to before. Dr. David Beckmann is on the line from Family First Medical Group right here in Evergreen Park. You can check them out online at yourffmg.com. How are you, Dr. Beckmann?
I'm doing well. Sorry to hear that your family is in COVID ground zero right now.
Yeah, you know what? But here's the thing. I always felt like it was going to happen at some point. Like, you and I have talked on this show before, and one of the things that Erica, my wife, and I have said really for a while now is that at some point the kids are going to get it.
Yeah.
And we've felt good about looking at, statistics like one that recently just came out, 26 million kids that have caught COVID-19, and only 300 sadly have passed away.
Right.
But that's a really high survival rate. Children have been doing very well. The Delta variant doesn't seem to be doing anything differently with children. We can get into that here in a moment. But what I think that we always knew it was going to happen. But when it does happen, that's when you really decide. That's when you find out if what you always thought you really felt that way. And I know that my wife has been very nervous. I have been extremely calm throughout this entire thing because I have listened to people like you, and I've gotten my data off the CDC website, not off of Twitter. And so I felt very confident throughout this entire thing. I want to just break down what the kids have and how they've done over the last couple of days and then get some comments from you. So on Tuesday, my son gets himself a very mild fever. I don't think he ever got over 100. And my daughter gets one as well. They both experience headaches. My son is done after the first dose of acetaminophen that he has. Mm-hmm. He never has any other symptoms. My daughter, though, is continuously just not feeling well. She's maybe coughing once every 20 minutes, but it's something in her chest. Her temperature is sitting somewhere around like 100 to 100.5. It's not really high. And the next day, as it continues, my wife says, I'm going to go get her tested because school's coming up. And I'll bring Dominic because, well, he didn't feel good yesterday, just in case he's asymptomatic. Like, we were thinking school coming up. They go get a test. They both test positive. Mm-hmm. At the time that my daughter tests positive, she's at 102.1 or something like that and shivering in the doctor's office. And that was the worst that she's gotten. In fact, now on day 3, her highest temperature has been a 99 even. Mm-hmm. And my son has been asymptomatic, except he lost his taste buds. And we've been trying out hot sauces all day long, and he doesn't even get the heat. And so, like, that's what we've been doing. And we assume we're going to get results back very shortly. They decided because they're short on the rapid test, they're going to do the one that takes maybe a day or two to confirm for my little guy who's 6 years old. But Nick sleeps in a bunk bed with the door closed with his brother. So either he has COVID or they can use his blood like they did the monkey in the movie Outbreak and cure the entire thing. So at this point, we've got 3, right? And are you surprised in any way by what I told you about these kids? Not very crazy symptoms, all of them in very good spirits right now.
No, that's completely consistent with what we've seen among patients in clinic that have kids in clinic that have gotten these symptoms or gotten this infection, and yeah, it's. I mean, you have the spectrum in your own house, which is people that really, kids that don't have any symptoms, and then other kids that have kind of a flu-like illness. And that's pretty typical. That's exactly what we've seen all the way through since the beginning.
So a couple of things that we've been told, and I want to see whether or not it's real, because it's been kind of interesting. First of all, we've been given the impression that from the time that they started showing symptoms, most likely anybody within 48 hours previous to that time was really exposed. And anybody that's outside of that 48-hour period beforehand, it's very unlikely that they're in danger. We did reach out to people probably about who had seen them over the last 4 or 5 days before symptoms, but we told them that kind of thing. Does that sound accurate to you? We've been told that.
Yeah. I think definitely the viral shedding is highest within the 24 to 48 hours before symptom onset. And so you would expect that viral load is the highest at that time. And then as the immune system kicks in and the fever starts to go up, the body starts fighting off the infection and that viral load starts decreasing. So yeah, that's definitely consistent.
All right. So now, this was really interesting. My wife and I are vaccinated, and we got a call from the Cook County Department of Public Health today when they were doing their contact tracing. And we also talked to the pediatricians for my kids, and they all said the same thing. You guys are vaccinated. If you don't feel any symptoms, you're actually probably fine. And the chances of you passing it to somebody is very low unless you have symptoms or a positive test. Even with the Delta variant, we were told. They told us if you want to be on the safe side, go get a test 3 to 5 days into this to confirm that you didn't have any breakthrough. But if you haven't had any breakthrough, you can exist as normal even though the kids in your house have COVID-19. And we got told this by not only the pediatricians, but when the Cook County Department of Public Health called up, which was surprising me. Like, we're going to go get a test. I know I have an event coming up next Tuesday for District 124, and I want to make sure that I'm okay. But that's the way it's been explained to us as vaccinated individuals. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So if you're vaccinated and you've had a high risk exposure, which you have, and you don't have any symptoms, if you test yourself 3 to 5 days after that initial exposure and you're negative, you're good. You don't have to worry. So yeah, that sounds accurate.
So, I mean, I guess the thing that I've noticed, and it's interesting, the only reason I kind of wanted to talk about it today, and I wanted to kind of put out what's been going on, is that I did a Facebook post, I want to say a couple days into this, and the reason I did it was because people were starting to hear that the kids had COVID. And I started getting a lot of texts like thoughts and prayers. Somebody told me they were lighting a candle, and I was like, they're okay. You know, I mean, like they're going to be fine. And I think that some people are getting very, very nervous. I think the Delta variant has scared an awful lot of parents, especially those who are getting ready to send their kids back to school. And I'm like, they're fine. So I kind of shared a lot of things in the Facebook post, like this is what's been going on and this is how they're reacting. Yeah. But also the fact that most doctors, or all the doctors we've dealt with, everybody we've dealt with, school nurses who we've talked to when we alerted their schools, the doctors that we dealt with, the Cook County Department of Public Health who called up, every single one of them treated this like they're kids, you're vaccinated, you're fine.
Yeah.
Like this would be very rare if something bad happens. You should just relax, Give the kids let them move around the house. Don't keep them in bed all day. My daughter was trying this low carb thing that she was kind of hooked on. They're like, go back to eating carbs. You need a little bit of sugar that helps your body fight the disease. And otherwise it was like, just, put some fluids in them and treat it like the flu. They'll be fine. And and the thing is, I think it's important to kind of talk about the fact that we're living right now with it in our house. And in reality, I got 3 smiling kids and they seem to be doing very well.
Yeah. I think that's probably the thing that has really, I think, hurt parents the most, is that the stories that people share are always the worst ones. And when all of those stories are shared over and over again or reported on over and over again, you get a false sense of what it really is out there. And it's unfortunate because there are a lot of people that are still struggling with the anxiety and the worry and the fear, when for the vast majority of people, it is not an infection to fear. And your experience is the experience that, tens of millions of other households have experienced with their kids. And you get that initial worry and concern because it's like, okay, well, they have this. What does that mean? And like you said, you initially are like, okay, well, I'm going to trust the statistics. And, 99.999% of the time, those statistics hold up and they tell the story. And the story that they're telling is the story that you guys are living right now.
Imagine one day, out of nowhere, you need your car towed. Who are you going to call? You have no idea. Right, because none of us think about that until it actually happens. So I'm going to give you a name, Dreamers Towing and Recovery. Located in Evergreen Park, Illinois, they will tow your vehicle, locally or at a long distance, at a very affordable price. What happens when your car needs a jump start? Dreamers Towing and Recovery. What happens when you're locked out of your car? Dreamers Towing and Recovery. You got a junk car, you don't know how to get rid of it, and you just want to move along and get some cash? They buy your junk cars. Covering the EP and the surrounding south side of Chicago, Dreamers is there when you need them with 24-hour service. Call them 773-410-4549. 773-410-4549. Turn a sudden nightmare into a dream with Dreamers Towing and Recovery. My son, I think, he's actually getting a kick out of the fact that he can't taste anything. We lined up a bunch of hot sauces. The kid loves hot sauce to begin with, but he's like a hot sauce aficionado. And he's got some really crazy ones in there. Like stuff that he's tasted on his finger, and he's like, that's too hot for me, And he was eating spoonfuls of them. And the thing that and I actually shared this video of him doing it on my personal Facebook. He's taking an entire spoonful of this ridiculously hot sauce, and he would sit there and he'd go, no, I can't taste the thing, and I don't even get the heat. There's a little heat in the back of my throat, but I'm not even getting the heat off of it. It's just dead in there. How long does that last for? Because I'm going to tell you, he was arguing over what kind of pizza we were going to get tonight. And I'm like, what do you care? You can't taste it. How long does that last for these kids?
Well, it's pretty variable. I would say that the majority of patients, they'll have their taste and smell come back within 7 to 14 days. But there are some people that will end up having symptoms for longer. You look at the statistics, and there are different measures of what long COVID is, and long COVID can be defined 100 different ways. But one of the symptoms that is described as the loss of smell and taste. And if you look at kids, 90% of them will have symptoms that will be gone within a month. So I'd say that on the long end of things, you'd look at a month, and on the short end of things, maybe a few days. So, I think the big thing with the smell and taste is after you've gone through the initial infection, the 7 to 10 days, main thing that you want to do if you still are, if your smell and taste haven't come back, is doing some aromatherapy. So kind of getting some essential oils and doing some smell tests to kind of retrain those senses, if that's something that continues over the next couple weeks.
Well, he's a 13-year-old boy, so I put my armpit in his face about a half hour ago, and he could still smell that. So I mean, right now it's just taste, Doc. But I mean, and that's the way I think we are in this house right now. I find it really interesting because I've had a lot of people, like I said, that have reached out and they haven't experienced it yet, and they think the worst because what they see on Twitter and what they see on TV. Yeah. And again, this is something I've had so many people say, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I am. I always thought this was going to happen," and that has been said to us now by multiple doctors, because my wife saw two of the pediatricians in the practice when she brought in the first two kids, and then she saw another one when she brought in the little guy the next day, and they all made the same comment: everybody's going to get this at some point. The idea that your kids aren't going to get this, no matter what you do, there is a point where they're going to get it, and the good news is that even though it might be more contagious with this variant, this is the way it's going to go. They're supremely confident. I found, my wife even commented, Erica's the amount of calm and confidence that they had when it came to dealing with children, it was as if they had been diagnosed with the flu. It was as if they had been diagnosed with some other kind of thing. There was no real change in how they approached it. They actually wrote out 10 days from now, send them back to school, and wrote it on a piece of paper.
Absolutely.
In supreme confidence and signed their names like that. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people have the impression of, well, oh my goodness, it's going to be touch and go, and it's going to be a long ordeal. And the doctors kind of looked at it as, nope, don't worry, because they're kids, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, that's what we should be saying. And, obviously there are the rare cases and exceptions, and that's why you stay in touch and you monitor symptoms and you make sure that there isn't anything strange happening or symptoms getting worse. But yeah, 99.99% of the time it ends up being a flu-like illness or less for kids.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about before I let you go, the funniest thing that was told to us. We had a nurse who I think just did not, at the very beginning, did not understand exactly how, I don't think she realized the way that she said it to my wife, because my wife couldn't stop laughing. That until we knew for sure that the 6-year-old had COVID, and if he didn't have it for some reason, we should isolate him from all 4 of us. And he would have to, we should all live separately from the 6-year-old, which made me immediately wonder, do we give him the kitchen with the stove and the food, or do we give him a sack full of Lunchables and make him live in the basement for a week? And what will that do to him psychologically? But when it was said to her, and when I heard about it, I was like, oh my goodness, I hope this is not what people actually think. Because that would scare the heck out of a little kid, right? I mean, especially if all of a sudden, me as a vaccinated person, I started putting on like a hazmat suit and locked him in a basement, right? But when that was said to me, I was like, oh, good God, I hope people don't act this way around their kids.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, there a few months ago, there was a New York Times op-ed that kind of followed that script where a small child tested positive for COVID. The child was terrified and was quarantined and scared away from the rest of the family. I think that's that's kind of the pathology that has emerged, I think, throughout this pandemic, is that when you're a parent and you have little kids, I mean, you're not going to put them in a room, or at least I hope you don't put them in a room away from all of you. I mean, that's cruel and unusual, I think. And like you said, I mean, if one kid gets it, everyone else is going to get it, and or he already had it. So I think that's unfortunately how some people look at this. Is that you really isolate and quarantine a small child. I think we have to take a step back and say, look, there's a difference between staying away from grandma who's vulnerable and having a small child who is not going to be severely affected by this. And we should stop treating every single patient the same. And unfortunately, a lot of people, I think, perceive the risk to themselves to be equal across the board. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. And when the vaccinated, it's pretty obvious. I feel safe. I'm going to tell you, I've kissed every one of my kids on their head. You couldn't drag me away from them, even though that they're not really in any danger. I have not changed how I interact with them in any way. And I think it's made them calm down too, because trust me, they've lived in this world for the last 20 months or so where, they're like, oh my goodness, I got COVID. And I said, I keep telling you, you're going to be fine with this. And now I guess you're going to find out whether or not your father is an idiot or he actually knows what he's talking about. So, I put my reputation here on the line with these kids. And right now, I think they're looking at Dad like, you know what? Dad was right about this. And they're breathing easier. But that's the thing. Like, if I would all of a sudden been like, all right, don't touch me. Stay over there. Get away from me. Like, what would I be saying to them? Especially because I have a vaccine that protects me. And I still, and all the studies show it. Everything is kind of showing it. I want to bring up one more thing with you before we get out of here. It's completely unrelated to the kids, but CNN put an article out yesterday, and I found it very weird because originally the article went through some very important points about the possibility of a third shot, a booster shot for the vaccines for adults. And then CNN pulled 3 or 4 paragraphs out of the story because I had a friend of mine who read it and then contacted me today and said, they've edited the story. They took all that stuff out of there.
Oh, really?
But you can actually find the stats online. It was like they just didn't want to report those stats anymore. And I found it very weird.
Huh.
But the stats were basically that a survey was done of 1 million New Yorkers, 3 different tables of data. And what it had shown was, although the vaccine seems to weaken enough that more people could catch, say, a cold from it, right? They could contract it. There's been nothing that's shown that at any point the risk of hospitalization or death has risen for anybody that has a vaccine, no matter how long that they've had it. And it basically said, if you're vaccinated with 2, getting a booster shot at this point, it's only proven that it would protect against contracting it. But it doesn't make any difference in whether or not you'd be hospitalized or if you would die, because it still is offering that same protection. Plus, the other thing that they pointed out, which they removed, was that they still don't know what the effect would be if they had a third one, because they have to do a study, because there is such a thing as over-vaccinating people. Have you heard or read anything about this? Can you enlighten me on it?
Yeah, so the booster push for everyone, regardless of their immune system, is premature. It's definitely out front of any data to support doing that. Like you said, I think people look at the utility of a vaccine as, does it protect me from being in the hospital and dying? And if it does, then it's working. The vaccine right now does that, and it continues to do that through Delta, through all the data that we see. We see that still 90% of the people that are hospitalized right now are people that have not been vaccinated at all against coronavirus. So, and those 10% that do get hospitalized, a lot of them are elderly who do have some compromised immune function. And that's why I think it makes sense if it's someone that's older or has an autoimmune condition and it's been 6, 7, 8 months since they got vaccinated, it would make sense that they maybe get a booster. But I think what's going to wind up happening is all the people who don't need a third shot are going to be the people that get a third shot. And I think at some point it becomes a moral question too. We're here in the United States vaccinating people with a third shot while the majority of the undeveloped world has struggled to get one shot. I think it just it doesn't sit well for one from a moral standpoint, and secondly from a statistical and scientific standpoint. I mean, you're essentially going forward with a lot of I would say a lot of privilege, trying to get a third vaccine to basically try to avoid getting a cold is kind of what it boils down to.
That is a really good point. Dr. David Beckmann from Family First Medical Group right here in Evergreen Park along Western Avenue. Check them out at yourffmg.com. I got my appointment coming up in a couple of weeks, Doc. You got to do a whole wellness check with me. I'm a mess. I can't wait till you get a look at this body. You're going to be like, oh my goodness. Chris, we've got a lot to work on. And you know what? I'll be able to follow up with you on what's going on with these kids. We will talk a little bit about it on Monday's episode. We are also going to have some guests on Monday's episode that I recorded before I found out my house was a house of COVID. So it'll be an interesting show, because right about midweek I was like, whoa, hold on, stop everything we're doing. We have to adjust. So I appreciate you jumping on. I'm going to run upstairs. I'm going to have some hot pizza. The rest of the family is going to have hot pizza. My son is going to have hot cardboard. And I appreciate you joining us, Doc.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Another show is wrapped up. Another show's in the books. Another show is wrapped up. And then by the looks, it's going to be a good one. And we'll see you next week. And the nude is basement. And the nude is basement. Another show is wrapped up. Another show is wrapped up. Another show is wrapped up. And it's in the books. Another show is wrapped up. Another show is wrapped up. And by the looks, it's gonna be a good one. Nudie's Basement. Broadcast Basement. The Nudie's Basement. The Broad Basement. Slancha.
The EP Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at the eppodcast.com.